Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Three Blind Mice Show. Very special show tonight. We got Norwalk native Andy Freeze, the new head coach at Ohio Northern University, with now a sparkling 3-0 record. Can't wait to talk to him. But first, Don's got a shout out. Go ahead, Don.
I sure do. I want to acknowledge a young lady at Norwalk High that's been playing on the golf team for 4 years. Spends a lot of time out at the golf course. Really has works at her craft when nobody's around. It's just what it takes, and she's the first Norwalk lady trucker to make it to the state tournament. There were I think 3 teams and 2 individuals that made it out of the Northwest District. She tied for 5th in the individual standings, and Anthony Wayne, one of their girls, was first place, and that team qualified. And the next 3 places went to Toledo St. Ursula, so that team qualified. So Kylie qualified as an individual, along with the young lady from Ashland High School. They shot 82s on a real challenging course up at Bowling Green, just outside of Bowling Green. So way to go, Kylie. Good luck next weekend down in the Dayton area where the Division I girls will be playing their state tournament.
Well, yeah, congratulations. So now on to our special guest. Like I said before, he's the new head coach at Ohio Northern University with a sparkling 3-0 record. He's a family man, a Norwalk native, Otterbein college grad, football player. He's been all over the place. He's been to Wisconsin, Michigan. He's got experiences from all kinds of different schools with recruiting, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky. Boy, does he have a resume. And we can't wait to have him come and join our show and tell us how it's going down there at Ohio Northern. Let's welcome Andy Freeze.
Hey, Andy. There we go.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome back. Sorry about the first go around. It didn't go so well, but boy, now we got something to really talk about because, hey, 3-0, and we're heading into the what do we call this? The mouth of the beast coming up, huh?
Yep, no doubt. Yeah, we had a nice homecoming win on Saturday against Wilmington College. Great day in Ada. The sun was out, the wind was blowing a little bit, and we were able to get a really quick start on the offensive side of the ball with everything. And it was really nice to see from our guys. We responded well and we played really well. The score reflects that a little bit, but obviously as a coach, we're always excited to clean some things up and get a really quality opponent this weekend in Marietta College down in Marietta, Ohio, and see what we can do down there.
Yeah, we're excited for you. And I know you got some big games. That one's coming up. Mount Union's coming up. But let's revert back to what we actually talked about the first time. Don, you got a couple questions. You got a question for him? And I know Jimmy's got some questions for him.
Yeah, and again, we apologize for the sound quality of last week's, and we pulled it off of most of the places where you can pick it up, and our plan was to do it again. So we're going to ask Andy the same questions because he gave us some really great insights into his program. I let it off with you were named head coach on December 12th last year. Obviously, in your mind, you had ideas on what you were going to have to do if you were named the head coach. What's going to happen from December 12th until that opening game in September? Lots of things there that you had to accomplish. What were, just right off the top, what were 2 or 3 things that the normal person wouldn't realize that you have to do?
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, we have what we call a 90-day plan, right? And again, a lot of coaches, when you go through that interview process, you're kind of like, hey, what's your task the first 90 days of being on campus? And, it's funny because you talk to enough people that have been head coaches, they're like, you're never quite ready for that first 90 days. And I can definitely reflect in that moment, thinking back to that time in December and doing that. The first thing, that you have to accomplish is you have to get in front of your players. It was a pretty weird timing for me as far as getting with the players, because I was there on a Tuesday. They were in the middle of exam week. So that was really my first opportunity to get in front of the players, was exam week, and they didn't come back until the end of January. So that was the first task of getting in there and at least putting a face to who is this guy coming in to lead our football program. And so that was very important for me and what I wanted to do. The next part is you got to meet with the stakeholders on campus, as far as getting to know the lay of the land, getting to know about Ada, getting to know about Ohio Northern, what we're going to do in recruiting. And that leads me into the next point. After meeting our players, we had to figure out who the new players were going to be. And luckily, with the engineering background we have at Ohio Northern coming from Rose-Hulman, I had some guys that I had talked to through that process that already knew about Ohio Northern and certainly knew me. And we could talk to them about the engineering school. But the best part about Ohio Northern from a recruitment standpoint is we have multiple other majors. We have business, we have pharmacy, we have our arts and communications department, or our arts and communications programs that we could really kind of broadcast that net out a little bit further. And so we had to hit the ground running recruiting. I think within a week we were having recruiting visits, which again, I didn't quite know everything. We had some assistants that were still on staff at that point that we made some changes after that, but they were great kind of helping me in that transition process. And again, we were having visits up until I think the Wednesday before Christmas. And then I was driving back and forth into Indiana, helping my wife out with the kids and everything along those lines. After that, for me, it was, again, meeting with people on campus. We have five different colleges on campus. So it was a unique experience for me, learning the 5 different deans of those colleges and talking to the deans and kind of understanding their role and how we help them out from a football perspective and how they can help us out from visits or talking to prospective student athletes, and then just kind of getting to know everybody in the athletic department as well too. Anytime you get put in that new environment, I want to be able to meet my colleagues, see the people I'm working with, go to basketball games, go to volleyball games and that type of stuff, because I think that's really important in building that camaraderie with everything. And then after that, it was just recruit. I actually, funny story, I think the president wanted to have dinner with me the first night I was on campus, and I didn't know that. And she came over to find me with the athletic director, and the athletic director's like, he actually went out to a recruiting event at Ontario High School. So I kind of stood the president up on my first day on campus, because I was out recruiting that night to get some players' names and do some things along those lines. So it's just recruiting. That's, our off-season deal. But, with that nucleus of those 90 days, finding a staff, getting to know our guys, getting to know the lay of the land, figuring out what we're going to do, offense, defense, special teams. And so that all incorporates, and those first 90 days went by like that. And the worst part for me was I was away from my family, but it was nice to kind of have that time to focus on what was important and kind of getting that foundation laid for what we wanted to do as a football program.
Right. Well, now we're talking about recruiting. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit on the format, but this kind of dovetails right into it, because you're talking about building a culture, the rowing the boat mentality, or, don't worry that the horse is blind, just get on and the horse is going to take you where you need to go. That's the old John Madden, basically the questions I had for you before. Now, I know you don't have the NIL yet where you're at, but you said your biggest issue right now is the transfer portal and then how to use it. And of course, that's going to dovetail potentially into the NIL. And then how would that actually affect your college, your level, your D3?
Yeah, so the NIL, we haven't kind of quite seen come to our level yet with a lot of things. There's certainly suggestions and thoughts that a lot of, not just football coaches, but coaches within the department have as far as things we can do to help us in that fact. And that's something I think we're still working through. I don't think the trickle down has quite come to us, because honestly, I don't think the D1 guys have a great model. Not a great model. No. I shouldn't say that. They don't have a model of like, this is how it should be, because it's not governed by anything. So it's just school to school.
They're winging it.
Yeah, so I think maybe once they have a clearer picture of how it's regulated, then it might see its way down. But the transfer portal is certainly something for us, because we're going to be able to get quality guys from maybe some higher levels, because with as much change as there is at the Division I landscape, they're maybe not taking the high school guys that they would have taken 5 years ago, or if guys get in the transfer portal with the idea that they're going to transfer up, but there's no opportunities. They're certainly not probably going to go back to the school they were at. And if there's no other scholarships at Division II, they might have to say, hey, okay, what's my next best option? And, a lot of times Division III is looked down upon sometimes from guys, but I think the guys that do transfer to our level realize like we play a really high quality football. As a Division I, no, we know that. But the only thing that's really making it different is the scholarships, and those guys are earning those scholarships. So we understand that. But, the other things that come along with that from our level are the financial aid opportunities and some of those things. And we know it's not going to be right for everybody. Like that's clear. We talk about that in the recruiting process. But for the guys that love football, want an opportunity to continue to play football, they can do that. For our guys, I'm not unrealistic either. Like if we have a guy that goes out and has a really great season, he's probably going to come in and say, "Hey, coach, I want to look at my other opportunities." And I won't be happy just because I think he's a great player. But if that's what he wants to do, we're in the day of age where we have to support our guys no matter what. And if I can help a kid achieve a dream that he wants to do at playing at a higher level, I kind of look at it as, who am I to tell him no? Because again, for us, we're kind of safeguarded a little bit. Like you can – Division III wise, you don't even need to really be in the portal, so to speak. But to be in the portal and get those opportunities doesn't mean that he's going to leave, because maybe he doesn't find a great opportunity and he comes back to us. And so we have to be just supportive and realistic about the times that we're living in as far as the recruiting, transfer portal, NIL, and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, because, look what happened to the quarterback from UNLV. He was just like, well, I'm not happy. I'm out,
Yep. Yeah.
To me, that's the downside of the NIL. I'm like, oh, okay. When they're like, well, they didn't pay me or whatever it is. And, boy, you guys got enough problems. You don't have to deal with prima donnas like that, So,
yeah.
So I get that. Now, I know Jimmy's got a couple questions for you. So, Jimmy, take it away.
I'm back on, huh? Unmuted me.
You're back on, baby.
No, okay, like you got the job back in early December and stuff. Were some of those coaches that was on the previous staff left, or did they leave to go to another job? Or
so that's always the difficult part about our process with everything. And I had inherited a staff of 5 full-time guys, and we kind of worked through some of those guys and sat down and talked to, because again, I have certain people that I want to work with, that I want to bring in. And so there were some changes made initially with everything. And that's a sensitive time, right? Because it's the holidays, it's doing all those things, and those are tough conversations you have to have. But those are necessary too, because with change is hard for everybody. But I had opportunities to go out and get a couple guys that I wanted to work with. And, we had to, and, we even had to hire someone as late as the end of July, because the initial person I hired in a job had left to go to another opportunity. So, it's a respectful street. You have to kind of take it with due diligence. And luckily, the changes that were made, everybody treated it professionally, because that's just unfortunately how the business end of this works. But it's never easy to have those conversations either.
Right. Yeah. Well, then here's as a bachelor when you started out and everything, and then you decided to meet that special someone and then get married and have her understand what your life was all about. And did you have to talk her into it, or was she kind of sports oriented, more or less?
Talk her into it, I don't think so as much. I might have been smart. My wife Miranda is an only child, and I think that probably helps her a little bit in knowing some of those things. And she's been unselfish through this whole thing. She was an athlete in college herself. She played college volleyball at Otterbein, and she grew up with a big sports background. So I think she always enjoyed sports, enjoyed that. And those initial times when you're dating, you're like, hey, like if I'm really going to do this. My head coach that I played for in college kind of said, hey, your first 10 years, you're going to probably have about 5 or 6 moves. And he's been right at the number. And that's kind of where we're at with everything. And so for us, it's always been hard, right? I started as a GA where I went to school, and from there I went from Columbus, Ohio to Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And that was culture shock, not really, but the school was very small and it wasn't in Sheboygan. It was just outside to the northwest of Sheboygan in Plymouth, Wisconsin. And it was a really great opportunity. And then from there, I moved back to Ohio, and the Lord works in mysterious ways, because I worked at Wilmington College for a few years when she was in grad school down in Oxford at Miami. So we were only about an hour and 20 minutes apart, which really made that transition a lot easier. Then we get married. We move back to Columbus. We think this is great. We're home. We're doing all these things. And then I get the opportunity up in Davenport in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But that was in July. So she stayed in Columbus while I was working in Grand Rapids. And she ended up getting pregnant with our son. And the joke I always make there is he is my son, even though we were distant with everything.
Not FedEx.
Yeah, not FedEx. Yeah, not the milkman's baby for you old timers, not the milkman's baby. And so, that's when I made my tough decision, and I left Davenport after about 9 or 10 months, which was brutal because I really enjoyed my time there. The head coach treated me awesome, and he gave me an opportunity to coach Division II football. But family was first, and I moved back home, and I was a terrible insurance salesman for about a year and a half before we moved back to Terre Haute. And we were in Terre Haute for 4 years, and then we're now back in Lima. So it's hard every step of the way. I know earlier when we did this, I got a little emotional thinking about my neighbors and the people that you meet along the way and the churches that you leave and those types of things, because for us, that's who we are. We really love we love the people that we associate ourselves with. And luckily, in today's day and age, it's easier than ever to stay in contact with those people. When I was a kid, if we would have been moving around, I remember people that moved from my neighborhood, I pretty much never saw them again. But we can still FaceTime, we can still call, we can still text and have those relationships. But it definitely takes a coach's wife to understand those moves and to support you. And she's made some really great friends along the ways at a lot of schools, and I kind of tear her away every 3 to 4 years. So that's why I'm hoping I'm not going to have to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's tough on a family.
Right. Now, does the kids having made friends, and then all of a sudden you're up and making that next move, a little hard on the kids, especially at that age, because they get to make friends easy. I have 2 granddaughters, and I know how that would be if they were to be moved from one spot to another. So.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's definitely tough on that end. Our son's 5, so he's a Hoshian for all intents and purposes. When we moved out to Indiana, he was only about a year and a half old, so he grew up in Indiana, in Terre Haute, and he was in preschool. He's kind of doesn't know up from down a little bit because he's still young enough. And when we moved our daughter out there, she just knew it was a new adventure and didn't have many quote unquote friends when she was 3. But when we were out there for 4 years, she starts going to school, going to dance classes, playing sports and doing those things. That's when it becomes really hard. And again, we had some great neighbors that we were really great friends with that had kids our age. And, we move and that's hard. And, again, another good story is my aunt, Sue Lonis, she was helping a dog breeder breed some puppies. And she said, "Hey, we got some puppies right when we were moving." I go, "Aunt Susie, now's not the right time, blah, blah, blah." So I was talking to my wife about it. And then my daughter the next day must have heard us. And she goes, "Dad, I think when we move, a puppy would really help me." So of course we got the dog. So that's
Part of the deal.
That's the deal. And again, I didn't want the dog. We had actually just put our dog down that when my wife and I kind of got done with school, we had gotten together, and we had just put him down in March, and I was like, no dogs ever again. That was a terrible, awful experience. And now we're back with a dog. So, but it's always hard on the kids. It's a little easier when they're younger. I'm never going to relate what I do to military, but you talk to enough military families, they move around a lot and do those things. And kids are resilient. That's the best part. They're going to find a way as long as we can support them. They're going to find a way to get through it. And we just have to be supportive as parents, and they know dad's happy. And I think in some little kid brain, right, as long as they know mommy and daddy's happy, that they're going to find a way, because again, they're resilient, and our kids are awesome. I wouldn't trade them for the world. That's my favorite title I got is dad. And that's all that matters.
Mine too. So I did have one other, and I'm going to let you ask a couple questions too, but I did have one other question to talk to you about. We were discussing officiating, the last time you were talking about some targeting, and we were going over the targeting rule, and then we started talking about the instant replay and how yours is a little different than D1 and D2 is. You want to like enlighten us on that one a little bit?
Yeah, so for us, and it's funny, we actually had another targeting call, unfortunately, on Saturday. So we've become a little bit of quasi experts at it, and we've, like, as coaches, that's a reflection on us. So we need to do a better job of coaching our players, and so that we've tried to get some clarification on some things. So essentially, how our process works at the Division III level is we now have, just like Division I, we got opportunities to use technology on the sidelines this year.
Okay.
So we can actually have iPads on the sidelines to review and do all those things. So essentially what happens from a officiating standpoint is if there's a targeting penalty in the first half, which has been the case for us each of these last couple of weeks, that the officials, there's an automatic 5 minutes added on to the halftime. The officials get the iPads from the sidelines, and luckily our technology worked this week, which was kind of the first week that we've had it work like we needed to. And then they go through and they're able to watch the two viewpoints, essentially, one from the press box view and one from the sideline. And they can go through and either confirm the targeting or take the targeting away like they do at the major Division I level. And now, again, like, it's not as great as that because they just do it instantaneously, so you don't lose the player. Like, if we lose a player in the first quarter, they review it at halftime and determine that the targeting's rescinded, then we get that player back, but we lost him for a quarter. But if they confirm targeting, then obviously that player's disqualified for the rest of the game if it's in the second half, the first half of the next game, with everything too. So the biggest thing that we've learned, obviously the big emphasis this year appears to be, forcible head or neck area shots or anything along those lines, which, again, we're working through with guys because, the hard one for the defensive players always seem to be the quarterback slide, right? When the quarterback's sliding late or anything along those lines, we just got to try to tell our guys to change your body position. Don't lower forearms, don't lower shoulders, do anything along those lines, and really make sure that we are proactive in that, because, again, it's a defenseless player by the definition of what the officials are calling, and we understand that. We want to take those types of shots out of the game. It's just sometimes it's hard to coach it out of guys when they're really aggressive and they're flying around and they're trying to get low, and
it's tough.
Yeah, essentially, like, you just have, like, it's not as easy as it sounds, but essentially you have to stay away from the head or neck area and really take a body shot. If, unfortunately, it's still going to be a penalty if it's a defenseless player, but you at least avoid the targeting, or you got to change your body direction, jump over, or do anything along those lines.
Yeah, I know Riley Johnson was talking to us. He's a Whitehead, D1 Whitehead, and he said they also are keying in on defenses making movements and making sounds and noises, simulating snaps. Trying to get you to jump off or false start. So he said that's another point of emphasis. And I know Don and I have had that at the high school level, but usually we talk to them first, like, hey, knock that crap off, and But yeah, I guess that's a real emphasis this year. And we had and we talk about all kinds of crazy, like, officiating calls. We were just talking about on our last show the offside call, the big game, Michigan and Minnesota, where they had the onside kick with the offsides, and Don's more of a back judge than me, but I have back judged, so I've been up there, and we talked about how we interpret that and how we position ourselves, and then we watched the video and went, oh no, this guy's in the wrong spot. He's not going to see down the line. And to make that kind of call and that kind of scenario, boy, that's tough.
It is, and that's we have a guy on staff. His name's Matt Simon. He's our offensive coordinator, and he's been around the block. 40 plus years in coaching. He's been he's won Super Bowls. He's won Division I national championships, and we always talk about it each week that he feels teams are the worst officiated plays in football, just because there's so many dynamics to it, right? Like, if you're running down, or if you're watching them, and if you have a crew that's not as well versed in some of those areas. Now, Division I, it's kind of interesting, like, when you see some of those mistakes, because those guys are usually, I feel like, pretty vetted and pretty sharp. But it's just kind of, unfortunately, part of it that
Yeah.
we know officials aren't going to be perfect, but in big spots like that, it's where you need them to be perfect. The human error is going to happen, but in those spots, you really don't want it to, obviously.
Yeah, that actually was
We're
one of
not
my
perfect.
lines. When
No,
coaches would talk to
I'm
me,
not.
they'd be like, "Well, you missed that one," and I'd say, "Well, there goes my perfect game again."
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And again, we're
Yeah,
not perfect either as coaches, and
there we
I
go.
you just got to work through those things. But when it's critical like that, that's when you really get frustrated, obviously, from a coaching
Right. And
perspective.
we talk about that. Like, that's why we do that muddle huddle between the kickoffs, between the
Hmm.
score and the kickoff. We always talk, even in basketball, these guys can tell you if it's a critical time, halftime, fourth quarter, boy, we'll get together and say, hey, watch this, let's position this way. And Don can tell you, we actually have the mechanic on that kickoff where we're literally, we don't straddle the line. We actually are probably a yard ahead of it, with my front foot.
Hmm.
And, if you're ahead of that front foot, you're offsides.
Yeah, yeah, and
I mean, that's like our director of officials told us the very first time we ever met him. He said, "Look, guys, I don't want you to be perfect, but if Helen Keller saw it in the first row, I want you to call it." And I was like, and I took that to heart from the, if it's, in other words, if it's obvious, put a flag on it.
yeah.
So Don, I think you had one more question for Coach before he heads off.
Well, I think I'd like to know a little bit about when you got your players together, when you got your freshmen included with the team for the first time. What kind of a message did you give them, or what you have to get a bonding again? I mean, you're the new head guy, so the old guys don't know how this is going to work yet. The new guys coming in just want to be a part of things. So, what did you and your staff do to get everybody on the same page and any team bonding stuff?
Yeah, and so I think back, I can put myself right where I was. I had to drive from Terre Haute over to Ada on December 12th on my first day of work over here. And so I had a lot of time to think about what that first message was going to be. And luckily, I had some people that I can lean into and kind of talk about or talk to about it. And, the message early was simple. Like, I'm getting put in front of a group of, call it probably 100 guys, 110 guys at that point that want to know who Andy Freeze is and what I'm about. And, basically the first thing I did was I went in and I kept it brief. I probably, our players, I don't know if they like it or don't like it. I tend not to be a long meeting person because I think, especially in today's day and age, you got to hold their attention and do those things in brief snippets. But, I just started with my story of who I am, where I'm from, what I've accomplished. And again, not to brag on those things, but I think it's important that they can sit there and talk and say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I'm about. And, I kind of left it at, this is my story, but from here on, it's about you and your stories here at Ohio Northern with everything. And,
Right.
not even just their stories, our stories, right? Because I'm a part of their story at this point. And that's a heavy lift for me to realize that, but that's the nature of it. And so that's where we left it because they had exams and everything, like I mentioned. So when we got back, us as coaches, we had to kind of put our recruiting pitch together, which revolves around having a really great setting for academics and athletics here at Ohio Northern. And we came up with what we call our standards of performances. And these are the four kind of core areas that we look to a lot of things and what we tell our recruits we're looking for. So the first one is toughness. Toughness is a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I would share my story with recruits and my guys that toughness for me, the first 6 months on this job was my family was 4 hours away and I was pouring more into the Ohio Northern football program than I was to my own family. And I didn't take that lightly. And I knew that was my job. So I didn't regret any of that. But, toughness means a lot of different things. It could be for our guys waking up at 6 a.m. for lift when it's 10 degrees in Ada and the snow is blowing, that's tough. And so the next one is reliable. We want guys that we can count on. We're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids, and I still call them kids because they are. I know they're adults, but they're still kids that make mistakes and have opportunities to learn from those mistakes. But we treat them like adults. If you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. If you say you're going to be somewhere, you need to be there. And we want you to be reliable to us as coaches and us as teammates. The next one is unified. I think this is like the biggest one for me, being an offensive lineman. When we have guys take the field, like we want to be a unified front in everything the way we do. So we dress the same, we look the same, we talk the same. And we have each other's backs, and that unity is what takes us forward with everything. And my guys laugh at me because I say our school colors are black, orange, gray, and white. So I better never see another color other than that out on the practice field. And when we go out to take the field, that's what we look like. And then the last one, and it's probably the most important in today's world, is non-negative. We know that the world is not all sunshine and rainbows. Like, we understand that there's going to be really hard times. That goes back to the toughness principle. But for us, the non-negative world is going to be a lot better than living in a world where everything's negative. The one thing I can't stand is when you show up to work and somebody's just always complaining. There's a lot of things we can complain about, but let's try to turn that on its head and say, hey, in good times and in bad times, let's really focus on what we do have or what we can improve upon rather than things we don't have. And I think, sometimes I'm sure my coaches roll their eyes because I try to be positive, and I'm not sitting here to say I'm always positive, because there's certainly some things that come across my desk as a head coach I'm not expecting. But for the most part, we got to try to make the most out of the situation we can, because sometimes you can't change it. And if I can't change the situation, why am I going to worry about that? I got too much energy put into this thing to worry about things that I can't control. And so if I can't control them, then, we just got to figure out a way around it with everything. And so that's what we talked about with our guys as coaches. That's what we really tried to focus on is find guys that fit those principles. And, from a recruiting class that, started really the end of January. I know we had some visits, but until guys came back to campus, and I forget how many visit days we had, but we were visiting essentially from January through the end of April, kind of until school ended with everything. And we picked up a couple guys in the summer. We were about 45, 46 newcomers to our class. And so we felt really good about that. We know where the numbers need to be for this next year to make sure we can retain those guys. But we felt strong about the class that we have, and we have some contributors early right now. We have some guys playing on special teams and some guys kind of as those fringe varsity guys that are getting a lot of experience with JV and playing those games. So, you need to find great players, especially in this conference, because if you don't have great players, you can get exposed at a lot of places really fast. And, So the guys have done a great job of buying into those things. We have a great senior class. We have about probably 30 to 33 seniors and fifth-year guys that have hung around, and it's a credit to them for sticking around during the change, because it's really easy to kind of say, like, well, I don't want to do this anymore if it's a new coach, if they had a relationship with the old coach. And you certainly understand those things, but these guys have bought into what we've been selling, and luckily it's paying off, right? We've played We've played 3 good weeks of football, obviously not our best, and we can continue to, but that's what's exciting, is because, again, it puts us in an opportunity in a game this week with two 3-0 teams and 2-0 in the conference. And it's kind of just that early test for us in the conference, again, to go play a really good Marietta college football team on Saturday.
Now, I know when, you get into fall camp, you're looking for starters. You're probably looking for seniors, grad students, the people have been with the program, to give them the opportunity to show what they can do. But with 3 lopsided victories, it also gives you a chance to get more players in the game and get a look at them now. So you build depth. But have you seen any kids that you thought might be good at depth that really are pushing the starters right now for a spot?
Yeah, for sure. And again, the biggest place we usually see freshmen make impacts are on special teams. And so, you get a couple injury bugs and everything along those lines. Those are the guys that's the first place you're going to test them. Now, the offensive linemen aren't going to be happy about that, because obviously they're not running down on kickoff. But for us, that's the spot where you can kind of plug those guys in to kind of see what mental makeup they have, right? Because if I tell you, hey, you're a 1 or a 2 on kickoff, and your only goal is to run down and make the play, like, you're going to find out who's kind of ready for prime time and who's not, even on kickoff return, right? Which is a really tough special team, because you got guys running full speed, and you got to put your head in there, so to speak, to kind of get that block done or anything like that. So, offensive, defensively, we haven't had too many guys that have played a lot freshman wise, but you have a couple guys that we snuck into that first game, and the lucky thing for us is we have a JV program, so you kind of try to save those guys as much as you can to play on Sundays because they can get a lot of reps within our system and learn our base stuff. Because again, varsity wise, we're running everything we got in the book that we got for the week, right? But when we get to Sunday, we might be simplifying it to see who can master the basics, and so that's what we're able to do. We got 2 JV games left on the year, so that gets us to 5 total. And that's always a good number JV wise, right? Because that's when you start sorting those guys out as far as, okay, hey, we can watch these 5 JV games and this guy really knows what he's doing, or this guy maybe not quite sure yet what he's doing. So we know who's who as far as who's getting the X's and O's taken care of.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So, guys, you guys have anything else to say or ask Coach before we wrap this up?
Well, I'd like to know now. You say you're giving us a little bit of a rundown on Marietta, as far as the numbers just match you two up just as close as it could possibly be. Now they have an established. I said they have established quarterback. How about coaching? And do you know anything about their style? Do you guys swap film and what you use to come up with a game plan?
Yes. So we OAC wise and the other conferences I've been in, we kind of have it's called a pool, right? A film pool that each week we have to upload information and data to that pool. And then that's where we pull from. So again, we have access to all the games and we can look at whatever we need to, whether it's the last 3, the first 3, kind of try to match up really what we do offensively to what other teams do. So we can kind of get breakdowns done with that and everything. And so, that's how we take care of that and handle that. And so we've had their last 3 games of this year, their first 3 games, I should say. And we obviously have our archives we can dig into a little bit to kind of pick and choose past years or anything like that. Andy Waddle's the head football coach down at Marietta, and he's done a really great job. He's been down there since the fall of 2023 or 2013. I'm sorry. And the reason I know that is because that's when I moved and came back to Wilmington. We were a new staff at Wilmington and they were a new staff at Marietta. And again, like he inherited a program that wasn't doing a lot of winning early. And he's changed that tide. They had a great year last year at 8-2. They're starting off strong 3-0 this year. And again, a lot of respect for what he's done down there. And again, offensively, they got a veteran quarterback who's been around a little while that is really good with the football and making throws and making plays. And then defensively, they've been really solid as well. They actually had a kid a couple years ago. I forget what his name is off the top of my head, but he was a trucker down there playing at Marietta. He was a D lineman and he was an All-American D lineman down there for him. I forget his name off the top of my head, but they're going to be, they're going to be stingy in what they do defensively. They're very dynamic in what they do defensively, and they got really great players that we got to show up and play our brand of football and do what we have to do in order to be successful.
Talk a little bit about the OAC, if you would. I mean, everybody knows Mount Union. Mm-hmm. Okay, they've set the standard 25 years ago, maybe more, but some of the other schools, and I know it's thought of as a very, very competitive, a high level Division III league. But I mean, you played in it. You coached down at Wilmington for a bit, and now you're back in it big time as the head coach. So, what's your if people want to know more about the OAC, what kind of stuff do you tell them?
Yeah, I'm very biased when it comes to the OAC because, like you said, I feel like I was fortunate enough to kind of play in the heyday of the OAC from 2005 to 2008 when there were really, really, really good players playing in our conference, and we still have really good players as well too. But we're still a top conference in the country when it comes to Division III football. Mount Union has obviously kind of carried the torch for that, and they've been that standard of what it means to be a really super competitive program in Division III football, and so we always get to live up to that measuring stick a little bit. We get an opportunity to play those guys every year, which I know, as coaches and players, we should be excited for because we're going to get to go against some of the best guys and kind of gauge ourselves where we want to be. But there's no easy out either. I know sometimes people look at scores and say, okay, here he is. He's just a coach saying there's no easy out, but there's not, because if we don't show up each week, we're going to have the opportunity to get a little egg on our face if we don't come out prepared to play. And again, and that's a credit to our coaching staff and our players that, we know that, each week we come out here, we got a really quality opponent, and you can't have that trap game, so to speak, that, hey, well, this week we play this team, but next week we got that. Like, we can't have that mentality. And, the unique thing is, I feel like a lot of the schools in the conference has been around a long time. Now, John Carroll is leaving the OAC this year to go to the NCAC next year. So we'll lose a really great team from our conference in John Carroll and a good school. But, from our standpoint, we just got to make sure that we fill the schedule with somebody else. But it's just it's a meat grinder. You get beat up each week. It doesn't matter who you play. Each week you're going to have some kid come in with a bumper or bruise on Sunday, and you're like, "How'd you get that?" And he's like, "I don't know, coach. Those guys were tough." And so it's a fun, unique challenge. When I was in Division II, I was in the GLIAC, and that's no joke up there. That's a really great conference. So I've had an opportunity to see that up close. And, the HCAC, when I was at Rose-Hulman, features a different branding of schools. And it was a more top heavy conference where the bottom schools weren't quite as good as the top end schools. And, OAC, I feel like it's pretty equally distributed amongst the talent ranges and everything like that. And that's why, for me, it's important to have a great coaching staff with a lot of different diversity and experiences, because everybody's going to bring something different to the table. And luckily for me, I fell into being able to hire some really great coaches that have gotten us to where we are. But we're not satisfied either, which I think is super important as well too.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot and forget somebody on the coaching staff. I know you said you had a fellow with 40 years experience, and and a lot of the people are interested. Where do you find coaches at the Division III level for assistant coaches? So why don't you just talk a little bit about where some of your assistants have been or where they came from?
Yeah, so we'll start with Matt. Like I said, Matt Simon's our offensive coordinator. He's been around a long time. Won 2 Super Bowls. He won one with the Broncos and one with the Ravens. He won a Division I national championship at Washington back in the early '90s. I think Mark Brunell was the quarterback that year, I think he's actually one of like 10 to 13 people that have won a national championship and a Super Bowl. So that's a pretty cool stat. And we with Coach Simon, because again we had the late change. He was a guy that was working as an analyst at the University of Maryland and wanted an opportunity to kind of get back into more coaching, because in those analyst roles at the Division I level, you don't have quite as much hands-on coaching as you do doing some of the other things. And so he had a common connection with our wide receivers coach on staff. And, we just got connected and we talked, and, it was for us, it was for me selfishly, like as a new head football coach, like this is a guy that's been a head coach at North Texas. He's been at Washington. He's coached with Don James, who's obviously a legendary coach at Washington. And he's, just had the opportunity to talk to and hire that guy. I was like, I'd be crazy not to want to work with this guy, and it's been really great for us. Jack Gammon's our receivers coach that I mentioned. He played at Marshall. I got to know him. He was a volunteer at Otterbein the year after I left the second time, and just through common connections have stayed in contact. And he's that grittiness guy that we need on staff. He was a walk-on from Bishop Watterson at Marshall that earned a scholarship, I think, his junior year at wide receiver. And then offensively, we have 2 other young coaches, Ethan DiBerardino and Lou Sepp, who are trying to understand what this college coaching life is. Lou's from the Philly area, Ethan's from Florida. And again, those guys are just kind of learning and learning the ropes, but they've done a great job coaching tight ends and running backs. Defensively, Robbie Brown is our defensive coordinator. Got to know Robbie through the recruiting circuit, and just kind of talk to him about philosophies. And it was one of those conversations that we have with a lot of guys, like, hey, if you're ever the head coach, call me. Hey, if you're ever the head coach, call me. And luckily for me, I had that opportunity to call him and say, hey, this is the job. And he had some other opportunities, but I was lucky that he picked us. Glenn Schweitzow is our assistant head coach, and he was the defensive coordinator from a year ago, and he's been around Ohio Northern for about 16 years, give or take. And so he was a veteran that I wanted to hang on to as much as possible because he knows the ropes here. He's got great football insight. He's been here a long, long time. He's a great coach. He can coach anywhere on defense. He can coach, and so he's along with Robbie, kind of the eyes and ears that helps me over there. But Robbie oversees the whole unit. And then we got Vaughn Thomas, who's our D-line coach. He came to us from Wilmington, actually. He's a Bluffton grad from Dayton. He's another young coach that's our recruiting coordinator. And when you're the recruiting coordinator, you just need to make sure you're a tireless worker. And I mean, I show up to work, and he's always got something on my desk for me from a recruiting standpoint. And he's awesome. He's doing a great job coaching our D-line and being the recruiting coordinator that I need to help me stay on top of things. And then Shaq Jay-Z is our corners coach. He's that intern / GA type role that he's a guy that, again, played at Indiana, played at Grand Valley State, and then he's been coaching high school, and we had an opportunity to kind of bring him on as an intern to show him what the college game is coaching like. And again, so we just have a really dynamic staff that everybody's from different backgrounds and everybody has different playing experiences. And I think that's really super important. I don't know how I dumbed my way into it, to be quite honest, but it really worked out for what we needed. And our guys have gravitated towards that. And, I'm like I said, we had to make that. I mean, I had to make a hire change at the end of July, and that's nothing that anybody wants to deal with, but people are on campus were upset. But for me, I was like, hey, we're going to go out and find somebody better. And luckily we had the opportunity to do that.
And all that, and you still get home to help with the dishes.
All that, and I still get home to help with the dishes. At least that's what I try to do.
So you got anything for him, Jimmy?
I just buy pizza. You don't have to do any dishes.
There you go.
Well, I want to thank you from all of us and for joining us again for a review. And we hope you come back to see us, and we definitely wish you the best for the rest of the season. And whether it's a playoff or a bowl game or whatever you guys get into, boy, we wish you the best of luck. And we thank you again for joining us.
Just how about a little bit of help here with maybe some people going down to Ada. You're at Marietta. Yep. On the 5th, October 5th. How about the week after? You're back home again?
Yeah, we're back home. It's actually fall break, so if there's anybody that wants to come out and catch a game, we might not have quite as many students there. We're home against Muskingum that day, which is the 12th, and so it's a 1:30 kickoff. And I know we've talked earlier, Ada's a great place to watch a football game, and the weather's kind of turned a little bit for us, which is nice. It's a little cooler now. We've gotten a little bit of rain, obviously, these last few weeks, and that's kind of helped us out. And so if you want to come check us out, we got a great setting for Division III football. It's a pretty inexpensive ticket if you got family. If you know the right people, you might be able to get on a pass list or something along those lines too. Just let us know what we can do to help you out. But it's been a really great experience, and it's a really nice setting. We have an unreal facility with great sight lines. I often laugh. I get in trouble a little bit because we don't have a track around the football field. The track's around the soccer field, so it's a really intimate setting to be able to watch a football game, which is I think the best part about our facility and what we have, because it's unique. It's different. You got the pond in the background. You got you can just tell you're on a college campus when you're sitting there watching a football game.
Okay. So that's October 12th, 1:30 kick down at Ada, playing Muskingum. That's Coach Brose's old college.
Yep. I know. I haven't talked to Coach Brose in a while, but I'll have to be thinking about him there.
Hey, he's got a son that's pretty good sized kid. I'm understanding he's a big weightlifter and playing football down in Myrtle Beach area.
Okay, I'll have to look him up.
Send that to your recruiting guy.
Yeah. Coach Thomas will get the email, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But again, thanks again for joining us, Coach, and we look forward to talking to you toward the end of the season.
Yeah, no sweat. Thanks again so much for having me, guys. Appreciate you.
Hey, good luck, Coach. Good having you with us.